this. This is a newer platform for us, and Lucy is a trooper for testing everything out with us too. Hey, Lissa.
Hi. Oh, I have a little delay on my camera again. I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Are we ready to get started?
Yeah, I think
we're good. Okay. So hi everyone. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Oh my gosh. Happy rainy Thursday. It's really raining out my window. But thank you all for joining us for the DC Collaborative's virtual meetings of our community of practice, formerly known as daily Zoom chats. So we appreciate you all tuning in. And today, as Tracey said, especially appreciate our special guest, Lucy Stirn from the International Spy Museum, for helping us kind of work out the kinks as we try out new platforms. But I think it's kind of appropriate. It's coming from the Spy Museum because you know how to maneuver around a lot of gadgetry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of gadgetry in your craft work, right? So, oh wait, what's the right term for it? It's spycraft, is that right?
Tradecraft.
Yeah. I knew I wasn't getting it right.
It's all good.
Teach us today. So Lucy has joined us to offer up some of the exciting distance learning education programs that the Spy Museum has already done, and giving us some good quick tips on how to pivot. So I hand the mic over to Lucy.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. This is a totally new system for me. I am a Zoom diehard, but I don't want to get Zoom bombed. So I'm all for this. So as Tracey and I were talking earlier this week, I'm not going to jinx it, but so far I haven't, I'm just going to leave it at that. So my name is Lucy. I am the School and Youth Programs Manager at the International Spy Museum, but I'm reporting from my apartment building in DC since we are also closed. And I do not know when we will reopen, but when Tracey and Wendy, who's on the call, and Wendy actually used to work at the museum before working at the collaborative, reached out about our distance learning program. I was happy to talk. As Wendy knows,
here. Sorry, my video is not working, but I can see everyone.
Hi, Wendy. I haven't seen her in forever.
No.
Wendy, feel free to chime in at any point since I know you have some experience with this.
God, you're the expert here, Lucy. You do not need to come
in. But we started out about almost 8 years ago. So when everything happened with COVID, we switched gears, and I have to say, as an institution, I'm incredibly proud of what we've done. And so what I thought I would do today is go through a little bit of the background on how we got started in virtual programming, or distance learning program, and then answer any questions you guys have. This is a chat. I am still trying to figure out this platform. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat, or have a comment, or want to share your experience. Feel free to type in. I have told Tracey she can be interrupting Cal or interrupting Caboose, whatever, Lucy. I don't care. I'd rather it be a discussion. Just by a show of hands, or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I think that's something we can do on here. I have no idea. How many of you guys are at a museum or at a cultural institution or an artist and are doing virtual programming right now, or have been doing it prior to COVID? A couple of you. All right, a couple of you. How many of you are, all right, taking that away, how many of you are brand new to this, are terrified of doing virtual, are like, oh my God, what am I getting into? Anyone put a thumbs down, I guess? Go with it. Okay, no one. Okay, so let me see if share chat. Oh, I have a chat feature now. Sorry, guys, I'm learning everything as we go. Let me share my screen. Tracey, you know what to do. Remember you. All right. How are we looking? Are we good, Tracey?
So I see the first slide, but it's oscillating this time, and it wasn't when we tested it. So
How about now?
there it is. That's better.
I'm telling you guys, this is all technology. And you'll see on my tips, one of the things is flexibility. So, and I will try and mute I don't know if I can mute it so that every time I get a chime, it goes in. I don't know if that's possible. But just so you guys know, this is our building. We are in Washington, D.C. I love to show it off. We're about a year old in our new look. So I just like to show it off whenever we can because it's closed right now. But so a little bit of background about our virtual field trips. Originally, we called them distance learning because that was the term that was used back in 2013. It was the go-to name for schools to use, and yet no one understood what it meant. Some people were using distance learning, some people were using virtual field trips, some people just were using whatever they felt like. So originally we started calling them distance learning and then switched over to virtual field trips because we felt it was more appropriate for what we were offering. That being said, I still get a lot of confusion about this word. People think a virtual field trip and they think I'm literally taking my camera through the museum, showing them the exhibits. That's not what we do. So I still have to get through. We originally purchased a huge piece of equipment called and I will show you a picture of it in a second. It is a video conferencing equipment. It has an HP 232 software. I don't know. I'm happy to talk offline about it. What I'm trying to say is you don't need it. It's a waste of money. And I know everyone's money is tight right now, so don't buy it. You don't need it. The only thing you need is a computer with a webcam and speakers and a microphone. Newsflash, every laptop usually has that nowadays. So you're set if you have one. When we started out, that was not the case. But we purchased a Polycom and we connected with the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, which is CILC. If you are not familiar with them, go look at their website right now. Or not right now, after I talk. It is a great resource and they are like a one-stop shop for virtual programming. A number of school districts use them. They have a small fee associated with promoting your programs, but it is, in order to do something consistently, I highly recommend getting on their service. It is just a valuable way to get your name out there. So CILC, Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, we worked with them. I will say they were a little misleading to us. They basically said your programming is fantastic on site. It's so unique. Just repackage it a little bit and put it up on our platform and it'll sell like hotcakes. Has anyone heard that before and it hasn't happened? Yeah, so that wasn't the case. We had to repackage it and we had a lot of pitfalls. And first things first, cost. We overpriced what we could sell it for. A lot of these places we realized we're doing it for free or we're doing it for $10. We couldn't sustain that. We had to pay for not only our CILC membership, but also for our virtual or our Polycom equipment that we bought. So we lowered the cost and we also realized virtual teaching is not the same as classroom teaching. If you have never done virtual programming until now, I'm sure you guys are starting to realize there is a huge difference. To give you guys a little bit of background on myself, I was a former classroom teacher. So I was used to going up to students and patting them on the back if they were having a hard time or needed to settle down, or getting the attention of the room was easy. You know, if you can't tell already, I love using my hands. I am loud. Yeah, Wendy can. And so virtual was very different. Virtual, you have to rely on the classroom teacher to help you out. And that was before COVID. I always think we also only did point to point, meaning we were in one place and the students were in another place. All right. It was one-to-one. Not anymore with COVID. So this was all new to us, the new virtual. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But when we started, we took some of our workshops and put them on a virtual platform. We had 3 hands-on programs, which is where we either sent material to the schools or sent them a packet of a PDF that they would have to print out and create. We also had 2 lecture programs where you can meet a former spy. Pretty cool, I think. And then we had 1 active program with no materials. And I'm going to talk a lot about that because that's the program we're only doing right now. And that's the one I highly recommend doing. But just so you guys know, each of our programs, we always email a pre-program packet, tips and tricks, as well as an activity that they can do beforehand. 45 minutes to an hour. Any longer than that, you're going to lose the kids. I mean, you guys I know are dealing with that today in a virtual world. I can't deal on a call for longer than an hour. I'm like, I'm done. No more Zoom for me. And then we also align them to Common Core and national curriculum standards. That's a given. Just so you guys know, this is our Polycom. It's a beast. Don't recommend it, but just so you guys know. Virtual is very different. I think if you are looking at going into virtual programming, be honest with the teachers up front. You will need their help. You need their buy-in. If you don't, it's not going to be the best program, because especially right now, you need the teachers to mute the kids. You need the teachers to help lead a discussion in the chat box. You need them just to make sure the kids are understanding what is going on too, because there's only one of you. And if you're having to manage the presentation along with the chat, along with the muting, along with the webcam, it's a lot. I will say right now, because we're doing Multipoint, we have 2 educators at the same time. I or my colleague is leading the program, and then the other one is helping with the chat and also has a backup PowerPoint ready to go in case our internet goes down. Someone else can come up. I'm a type A person. I have a plan A, B, C, D, E. That's just the way I am. Creating a general program is key. This was something we didn't have right away. And when I talk to any museum, any cultural institution, any person interested in virtual programming, this is what I say. Create a general program, because when you create a general program that can be done on the fly, it's always good to have in your back pocket. We have a Cuban Missile Crisis program and another program that require PDFs. Guess what? I can't begin to tell you how many times teachers forget to print out those documents. Without those documents, we can't do the class. So guess what you're getting today? You're getting our Spy School 101, which is our general program, which is a basic program that we can adapt to the grade level of those students, grades 4 and above. It's, do you have what it takes to be a spy? We do a bunch of activities. We engage them. We ask them questions, but there's no materials involved. The kids are just in front of a computer. So that is the only program we are doing right now. Okay. But for example, a lot of the people that are I cannot talk today. A lot of people that are booking workshops today are booking them because they couldn't attend the Spy Museum for their spring visit. So this is the perfect workshop for them. They're seeing the artifacts. They're doing some of the interactives, like, can you identify an agent in disguise? They are learning about what is intelligence. And little do they know they're having fun, but they don't know that they're learning. But what I love about this is we can make it for 4th grade, but can also be for 12th grade. Or it can just be adjusted. So I think if you are starting to think about doing a virtual program, Start there, start basic. You don't need a lot of bells and whistles, okay? So classroom expectations always start at the beginning. I always, before I even introduce myself, which I sometimes always forget to do, say, you guys are going to mute your microphones. If you have a question, raise your hand in the Zoom chat or ask a question. Same sort of thing. It just depends on the teacher. And that's why I always have a conversation with the teacher ahead of time, just to make sure to see what their comfort level is with virtual programming. Because it helps get out the nitty gritty out of the way. I will say Zoom changed our lives. I know everyone is having issues today, but before COVID happened, I loved it. I would marry Zoom tomorrow if I could. They made it so easy to do virtual programming because before that, I would send a GoToMeeting link and then we'd have to do a test call. And if the thing didn't work, it was a spiral. It was a headache. It was so much work. Zoom, I sent the link. It was easy to connect. It was user-friendly. Now Zoom is giving me other headaches, but I still strongly believe if you were going to use one platform, Zoom is a platform to go in. Every day there are new security features going in. If you use it correctly, there's less of a chance of Zoom bombing. There still is. I'm not going to lie. But I think as they become more comfortable, I think it'll get better. There's also Google Meets, which I have used with some schools because they have not allowed Zoom, and that works. It's not my personal platform that I love, but it works. Microsoft Teams is another one that is working. We have that internally. I don't have it externally. GoToMeeting, I hate. Sorry if anyone loves GoToMeeting. I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. I just found it was too complicated for me. So those are some of the platforms you use. You do not need the Polycom. In case you didn't understand that already, you don't need any fancy equipment. I will say when you are doing a virtual program, don't have a window behind you. It'll make you glow and you will be dark. Right now I have so many different lights on, but I have one light that went out and we can't get a bulb replaced. So I look a little dark today. Also, I have my laptop propped up a little bit on a couple books so that I'm not like this. And so you see my double chin. You got to look at least a little bit okay. You can do a virtual background. My computer can't. I like it. For some reason, my computer doesn't allow virtual backgrounds, but virtual backgrounds are great right now if you can. So there are also so many sites right now that are talking about how to look your best in a virtual room. There are a lot of people that could use those tips, including me probably. But also looks don't matter when you're doing a virtual program that much, just as long as you're not behind a window. I think that's like a pet peeve of mine is that. Student engagement. And Tracey and I were talking a little bit about this and she asked me to talk about it. It's really hard. You honestly can't tell. Oh, you're fine, Tracey, because it's not behind you. It's off to the side. You're good. You can't tell if the kids are having a great time sometimes, partly because if you have 60 kids in a room, you can't see all their faces because each one is in a little box. Sorry. And when I'm saying a room, I mean a virtual room right now. When it's in a classroom, it's different. But right now in the world we're living in, I can't see all the students sometimes. Also, you have some students who won't share their background or won't share their webcam. I think those are the stories I'm having the hardest time with personally, is hearing that a lot of kids aren't wanting to share their rooms, their backgrounds, because they're embarrassed by where they live. And that breaks my heart. But I don't ever force a kid to share their camera. That is my one no. Just don't. Just let it be, and that's the teacher's job. Also, classroom management, I have found if the kids are unruly, I can only say so much. It reflects poorly on the teacher, less on me, I find, because if I was the teacher, I would be embarrassed. And if the teacher's not embarrassed or doesn't really care, there's only so much I can do. So I'm just going to continue and lead on with the discussion. And if it becomes to a point where it's too disruptive, we end the meeting. I had one student once, I had forgotten to disable the whiteboard feature on the Zoom room. This was the first virtual program I did, Multipoint. I've learned my mistakes, but I had a lot of inappropriate drawings from 8th graders. You get where I'm going. So I disabled that, but we continued. It was fine. The kid was kicked out of the room. So, but it's really hard to tell student engagement. We don't quiz them in a way that they're graded, but we try and call on every single student if we can. And I always set up at the beginning, this is a safe space. There's no such thing as a stupid question, yada, yada, yada. So we try and get them to feel comfortable. We joke with them a lot. That is the type of things we do. And don't get frustrated. I will be the first to admit, I get frustrated with technology. We had a little bit of a hiccup earlier today. Tracey can tell you, I was ready to throw my computer out the window because I couldn't get my microphone to work. It happens. It's technology. Technology fails. That's what we always say in the world of spying. You can't rely on technology. The only thing you have is your brain. But that's why I loved Zoom, it was very easy for you to use. Hey, Wendy. Sorry, I haven't seen Wendy in like 5 years.
I finally got my camera to work, and I'm also feeding Ada right now, so kind of multitasking at the same time.
You're good. It's just nice to see you. Sorry to interrupt everyone. I just love to see Wendy. So just right now, what we're doing is we're doing a bunch of programs. We quickly changed on the fly that first week when everything went south. And we realized the only program we can do for students and schools is our Spy School 101. Every other program we offer had a component that needed to be sent to the teacher, printed out by the students, or material sent. X-nay, wasn't going to happen. Didn't want the teachers to have to send it to the kids, didn't want the kids to have to print it out. Some kids don't have a printer. So we stopped that. We also said we could use our platform or we can use the school's platform, whatever they want, because we quickly realized Zoom was becoming a no-no for schools. So we were able to change on the fly. That goes back to flexibility. We also decided that we should do some free public webinars. We started doing these not as a webinar format and quickly realized that cannot happen. With 150 people in a Zoom room, it was a mess. People could unmute themselves. The chat was just a nightmare to control. So we reached out to Zoom, and my boss, who is an amazing woman at getting stuff for free, somehow realized or somehow got Zoom to do a free webinar for a couple of days. But we have that till the end of May, so it has worked for us. So we do 2 public webinars a week, one for grades 7 and up, where we do some activities that are from our exhibits on analysis and mind games, and then one for younger kids, which is Spy School 101. We just changed the name, so that was it. And then we're doing another one in a couple weeks. Yeah, I see the question from Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get there in a second. Thanks, Tracey. We're doing one in a couple of weeks with a former chief of disguise at CIA. So we're doing a Spy's Eye View program, which should sell pretty well, but it's free. Paul's question is, what's your feeling on costume interpretation to engage students in a virtual classroom, dressing like 007 or Q? I love it from the standpoint of if it gets you into character, and I think it does engage the students. I will say we don't do that, partly because I don't know why we don't. We could. I think it's just more of we're doing so many different things at one time to get dressed up and then do the program and not, take it off. I will say I have a couple of disguise materials I quickly put on. I'll put a hat. I didn't grab anything before I left the museum, like a mustache and things like that. But there are a lot of museums and cultural institutions that do wear costumes. I know the Minnesota History Center, I want to say that's the name, they do a lot. Thank you. They do a ton in costume and green screen. My dream before COVID happened, and it was in my budget and now is no longer in my budget, was to have a green screen. And that is now slashed. one day it'll come back. When we did move to our new museum, I got a studio, which changed my life, meaning no one could unplug my equipment. No one could burst in the door. So you need a soundproof place, and to have a green screen is amazing. I love the idea of costumes. I really do. I think where we draw the line, though, is the difference between a costume and a disguise is so different in the world of intelligence. It can be a blurry line for kids. But if that is something that works with your programming, go for it. You want to dress like Pablo Picasso and do a Pablo Picasso activity? I love that idea. So I don't think it's a bad thing to do, because I also think it gets kids engaged. Anything to get them engaged. And just some other things we're doing. We're doing a family program that we're actually launching this Friday. With 20 families, they can register, and we're doing a game night sort of thing, but where their house becomes an operational zone, and they're having to do different activities, create a gadget, get in disguise, and that is a fee-based one. So we are charging $10 per household. It is the first one we're doing for a fee besides our student programs, the private school programs, and we think it'll work. I'm always hesitant with charging for programs virtually that are, a mass, because technology can fail, and to issue refunds or to have to try and troubleshoot is hard. I will say, we always say at the beginning of our free programs, we are not technical people. That is not our job. It is not in our title. We can't help you if your technology isn't working, if your speakers aren't working, or if the video is lagging, or if it's, the circle of death. We can't help. It's also a free program. I will say right now, I was talking to Tracey earlier, people are a little uptight right now. And your goodwill might not come across as well to some people. If you do a free program, they'll still nitpick and yell at you, not yell at you, but in an email, they might not send nice things, but that's okay. For every one negative thing, you're going to get 100 more like it. So if you're able to offer a free program right now to get your feet wet, if this is new to you, do it. It's free. If it goes haywire, it's free. So it's a great way to get your feet wet before you start charging for programming. Our adult department has done an amazing job as well, doing new programs every week. They do 3 different ones: so trivia, a happy hour with a local bar and a speaker, and then spy chats with our executive director. So we quickly moved and made a virtual learning. We were lucky. We sort of already had this in our back pocket, but we learned on the fly too. Learning on the fly is what you're going to have to do. But it is so worth it for right now. I think it is the wave of the future, unfortunately. I think once life goes back to normal, I don't know if we'll ever go back to our normal, but I don't think virtual programming is ever going to hurt you. And the reason we started out with virtual programming was to reach more people. We are the International Spy Museum, so we wanted to be international. I've reached Australia, Mexico, Canada with our primary programs before COVID. Once COVID happened, we have reached, I believe, like 25 or 30 foreign countries, including the United Arab Emirates, India, Africa, UK, all the European countries, South American, you name it. It's amazing to see where these people come from. Paul asks, how popular are your virtual programs where people have to pay? Paul, are you referring to before COVID or after or during COVID? During. It's been a mix. I will say schools are so thirsty for programming right now because there's only so much they can do with their students in the class. I think a lot of public schools have slashed all the different, why can't I think of the word, curriculum, and they're just doing the basics. And I think they're so thirsty for those field trips or those activities and the social interactions that kids are missing right now. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you're creating these programs, is to try and keep that social interaction. I hate webinars. I love Ada. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm not a webinar person. My colleagues and I, when we're on a webinar, it's silent because it's just the two of us chatting, and that's really boring. Like right now, I'm not a lecturer. This is so foreign to me. I'd rather have a dialogue. But during COVID, we've done really well. I have at least virtual programs a day that are being paid. We charge $70 right now for a program, for a Spy School 101 program, instead of $85, which is our normal rate. Guess what? Tomorrow it goes back up to $85. And I am honest when people ask, are there any other discounts for programs? We don't. We are struggling mightily, as everyone is right now. And so I'm just honest with them if they ask for a discount. And I still think $85 is a great price for these programs, because where else can you see a lipstick pistol, a dog dew transmitter, and a scrotum concealment? I don't show that to kids. Don't worry. Yeah. So just had to throw that in there. But we have been very popular. And there are pros and cons to that too. So
I love how like engaging all of the workshops are at the Spy Museum, and I know that because I've been a part of it, and I know Lucy is like super lively during the workshop and online. And I was just wondering, because some of our members are performing arts centers, which are slightly different than a museum, actually very different. Do you think you have any, like, I don't know, just suggestions or maybe recommendations on how performing arts centers can create engaging educational, online activities or workshops or, virtual field trips right now?
yeah, no, that's a great question, Wendy. And Caitlin, just so you know, we do about 2 or 3 a day. Next week, I'm doing 5 in a day. That was stupid. Don't do that. But I can't. That is my one downside. I can't say no. But going to cultural institutions and performing arts centers, oh, Wendy, you really had to pick the hard question for me. That's hard because you guys
have like simulated experiences at the museum, which are kind of, it's a very like it's very different than usual museums,
Yeah.
So you guys have had more experience kind of doing different types of programming.
I think it's hard because I think performing arts centers, and I'm sorry, my mom used to work at the Kennedy Center, so I love performing arts. I grew up in a performing arts household, so I don't want to, if I'm saying something incorrect, please correct me. But I think what's hard for you all is because it's more of a stage and a theatrical presentation with multiple people in one space. How do you do it virtually where everyone is in a different location? I think there are ways to do it. And I almost think you can play off of that. I know there's so many different things going on right now with Broadway and other, TV shows and everything doing, Zoom talks that way. I also think from a performing arts center, what would be great is if you send out a script to students ahead of time and have them enact with you. Right. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so could be totally wrong, but I think, or having them get into costume.
Or like the backstage experiences that you would normally get could be now online, right?
Exactly. I think that's something that's unique. And I think it goes back to performance and engaging and getting the kids involved, not just staring at a computer, I think is so important right now. I will say there's a lot more chat going on when you get on the calls. Kids just want to talk to each other or they want to share their stories. I have a lot of kids who want to just talk about their life and share their experience. Don't diminish that. I think right now we have to let kids also just talk and share and allow them to voice their opinions. And I'm finding teachers are also allowing that. Before a teacher might just say, don't call on this kid again in the chat to myself or like mute them. they're not doing that anymore. They're letting these kids express their feelings or their opinions. But I think for cultural art institutions or performing art institutions, I mean, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I think, seeing the back end or having them create something ahead of time and then sharing on this platform, I think is a great activity as well. I think you guys are in a unique position, but I also think thinking outside the box right now is key. I am not a think outside the box person. It's in this box. My boss is the think outside person. She comes up with all these great ideas, as Wendy knows. So I'm curious to see from performing arts centers what you guys are thinking of doing, what you guys are doing, if anyone can provide insight.
Yeah. Hey, Lucy, this is Trey. I work with the collaborative. My camera's not on, but my mic is working right now. For some reason, I can't work my camera on here. One of the things that with performing arts centers is a little complicated, especially when it comes to theaters, is just the role that the Actors Equity Union plays. And so there's just it's a little more multifaceted, and so a theater in theory could live stream a production of their play or their musical or their opera. However, there are laws, or there are certain rules in place with equity.
Yeah.
There are certain charges. You have to pay the actors for the live streams. And so there are certain things that you can and can't do in that regard. I did have a question for you though. So while you're interacting with students, is there any type of background check or certification that you needed from the school district in order to engage with students? Because I know at least for in person, that is something that's required to do when you're working with students, at least for DCPS. If you're an outside person going into schools, you have to have a certain type of background check, and so I'm not sure how that applies over virtual. That's something that we're figuring out as well.
No, we have never had to do that. I work with DCPS almost at least a couple times a month, and we've never had to get a background check from that standpoint. In order for them to pay us at the beginning of the year, they have to send the purchase order and things like that. I think right now, in all honesty, everything has gone out the window from a virtual standpoint, because I think everyone's just like, what's going on? And so they're moving at light speed. I will say 5 weeks ago is when I started to see turn in the corner, even a month ago. The first couple of weeks, everyone was just like, I don't know what's happening. And I think now everyone's getting into the rhythm. And I've had two classes at DCPS, and I haven't had to provide anything. I think the main thing schools are now doing is using their platform, or I'm getting a lot of questions from teachers asking, what platform are you using? What security features do you have in place? And I'm honest with them. I say, we have done everything we can from a Zoom standpoint. If they're not comfortable with it, that's fine. We can use their platform, but we don't offer any other platform besides the Zoom room. So I think it just depends. Yeah, Paul's right. The Anacostia Community Museum is working with DCPS. The school takes care of the applicable releases and the Zoom project connecting student stories. I mean, I think right now, I'll be interested to see next year, Trey, if things change. I think going forward, it might be different, but in all my years of doing these programs, I've never had to sign a release form or anything like that. I will say I am particular about who watches the program. So like our sales department has wanted to sit in on these because they want to sell them. I don't allow that, because the kids are putting their real names into the Zoom chat at first, and then they can change their names to a code, an agent name. But because of that, I'm very particular about who gets access into it. yeah, it's hard. I also don't allow them to record the meeting. There's no recording allowed. They sign that in their contract. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back to what you have asked about performing arts.
Yeah.
At Sitar Art Center, we were supposed to be doing Annie this summer, but not virtually. And yesterday, yesterday we decided that we are going to go through with a virtual performance. So we are just working on the casting. We don't know what that would look like, but all of the students have already sent to us their video audition. So we've already started that. But we jumped in at the very beginning with classes virtually. So yes, it was a learning curve. It still is for us in any case. But that will be an interesting experience because, as you said, everybody is in a different room. They are in their own homes and spaces. And what will that look like? So we will send scripts in advance, of course, and have used the Zoom room chats to rehearse both choreography, singing, and all of that. So that should be interesting. And
oh my God.
I do have two colleagues that were here at the collaborative 2 weeks ago, and I think they received some grants from Maryland, and they are doing virtual performances for children. And their first performance, and that's just little children's stories, very young audience. They had 105 signups, but they had 85 showed up, and that still allows them some interaction. They could, I guess, respond to feedback as they manipulated the mic on and off. So just
Yeah, going on with that, I will say the raise your hand feature in Zoom has been huge. Whenever the students know how to use that, I use it to our advantage because that means we can have more of a dialogue. I can call on the students, I can unmute them, and it allows for more of that normalcy that I think everyone's wanting right now. If you're not familiar with the raise your hand feature in Zoom, it's under the participants. And then they can click on the raise your hand feature. But I love how you're doing, Annie. I think it's fantastic. And I do think you can make it your own. And, there's no reason why it has to look what we think it should look like. Does that make sense? I think this day and age, what we know is out the window. I keep saying that, but I think it's true. We just sort of have to think creatively. So, all right. So Paul, you asked, do people pre-register for your virtual programs or they just join at the assigned date and time? So it's a two-part answer. For our private programs that we do with school groups individually, we have them fill out a request form online. It comes to me, I look it over, and then I'd be like, hey, yeah, this date works, or next date. We send them a contract, we send them the Zoom. It's all hunky-dory. For the public free programs, we have them register on Zoom. So it's on our website. It takes them to the Zoom registration that we have set up. It then sends them the link to connect. The same thing I know with their adult programs uses GoToMeeting, and that's how it works. I will say Zoom has been fantastic from a registration standpoint. My one rule, do not ever, ever post your Zoom link on a website. Don't ever send it out in a mass email on your website. For example, our communications department accidentally did that today with the program. Immediately, quickly got it down, had them redirected to the registration link, because when I send out a calendar request internally, I just include the link so that my staff can connect just to the link. They don't have to register. But don't ever, ever, ever publish anything on a website saying, just click here to connect. You're just asking for a Zoom bomb. When we first started doing these programs virtually, we had people register online, and then 10 minutes prior to the program, we would send them the Zoom link. I won't go into details, but I had some not great conversations with people saying, I never got the link. I sent it. So but to avoid that, we just now have it go through Zoom. And the nice thing about Zoom is you can customize the questions you ask. So you can ask like first, last name, yada, yada, all those basics. But then, do you want to join our email list? How did you hear about this program? All of those things. So you can customize it. So that's that. All right, Lacey. I'm wondering whether Lucy or anyone on the call has suggestions for handling harassment via virtual platforms. I work for a literacy arts organization, and we're hearing from familiar organizations and partner authors that racist, gendered, and homophobic harassments from guest students has been happening. Tracey, do you want to take care of this one? I don't want to jinx it. I'm just going to leave it at that from the standpoint of read between the lines. It hasn't happened to us. It terrifies me, as Tracey can attest to. I am terrified of that day when we do get Zoom bombed, and we get something like that. I think as soon as, unfortunately it's a virtual world, and I think you open yourself up to that more risk. That being said, I think you let the teacher know ahead of time, if this happens, I'm going to end the meeting immediately, because as the host or co-host, you have access to end that meeting and end it. Do not, the minute you see that, end it. And then send an email after and to send them a new link. We have limited all of that from the standpoint of the chat. Depending on the class, for example, for a public program, only the chat feature allows people to write to the host and co-host or the panelists. They can't write to everyone. That was something that wasn't available or had its issues until we got the webinar platform. So we had people writing some inappropriate things, not to the extent that Lacey you're referring to, but like poop or, stupid stuff like that. So, but parents were angry. And so we limited that. We only allow participants to talk to us in the chat, unless it's like a group of 10 kids in a private, class setting. Then I open it up for chat, but I can immediately limit it. I also think using the waiting room feature in Zoom is key. So only allowing in people you recognize and then locking the room is huge. So I don't know a lot about it, to be honest, but I think it's something you have to be hyper aware about right now. But in general, I think that's anytime you do a virtual program, even beforehand, I was still always aware. And the minute you get a question like that, it's see you later. Because you could have those conversations about why, what are you saying, that sort of thing. But right now I don't want to go there. Did that answer your question, Lucy? Paul, what's the downside of putting it on your website? The downside of putting the link on your website. Oh, Paul's signing off. Never mind. I think I answered that question though. Is Zoom registration similar to Eventbrite? Yes and no. It is similar. I prefer Eventbrite. The problem is I think you're then giving out the link, once people register, you're still sending out the link. That's not to say with Zoom, you're sending out the link in an email as well. Zoom sends it out. I just think I prefer Zoom. It's a one-stop shop. They know it's there. It's one less email system that can get lost in junk. But I also set the reminder of like a day before or an hour before, here's the link. And I include a tech section. We are not tech people. If it doesn't work, not our problem. Because that is one thing both adult programs and youth programs have run into, is people being like, I can't see you, or da-da-da-da-da-da. Sorry. I guess. Yeah. As Lacey was saying, there's a ton to consider with virtual platforms, and in-person responses aren't always the right go-to in a virtual space. Exactly. So,
if I can just butt in real quickly, see, another option to avoid kind of like bombing or Zoom bombing or anything like that is to not do kind of like you're saying, something that's interactive and to just do a live stream where people tune in as opposed to engage directly, and they can still submit questions and comments. That's something we're exploring at the collaborative as well moving forward using Teams. There's a way to do a live streamed event where you are the person presenting and you can send that invitation out to specific teachers or to specific students. But you don't have to worry about anyone else sharing their screen or anyone's even typing comments that are inappropriate, because you can uh, decide whether or not they're presented to the entire group. And so it's less interactive in a sense of like you can't see the students, but the content is still able to be produced. And I know that performing arts institutions are looking more into doing something that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think for performing arts, that's perfect. I think though, you're going to lose a lot of students if you don't have an interactive component, if that makes sense, from if you're not a performing arts, because I think if you're just a talking head, or don't allow for that social interaction, it's harder. What I will say, the poll feature in Zoom is fantastic to get a little bit of interaction going, and to have a conversation, I think has made a huge difference. Just personally, and I understand where you're coming from, Trey, I think webinars for students right now is really hard. And I think you're going to lose some of that interaction, the social interaction that I think a lot of teachers are also looking for, if that makes sense. Like I know Zoom bombing is such a big issue, and there's so many risks with that. But I think if you go to the webinar platform, I've also had a hard time doing it because it's just you. It's static, if that makes sense. But I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Joan. I work at President Lincoln's Cottage. I'm interrupting a little bit, but I just wanted to say that one of the things we have found that's been really helpful in managing the kind of interactivity you're talking about, and also the kind of sort of minor tech problems, is exactly what you were saying about having two educators or two staff members on the call. One person who is sort of the quote unquote face of what's happening, and the other person who can help facilitate. Which I think of as being very similar to, like, you might have someone who was teaching and somebody who like helped set up all the chairs, right?
Exactly.
And that's been really helpful for us. We've been doing virtual game nights since mid-March. We had a couple of other sort of lecture, workshop-y program type things, and that's been really helpful for us on all those different kinds of things as we continue to experiment.
Have you guys been using Facebook? Am I wrong? I forget. My colleague did one of your game nights.
We have been using Zoom for game nights. We did live stream. We did a Zoom call that we then streamed through onto Facebook Live. We had a chat with an author whose work is connected with our site.
Got it. No, you guys are doing unbelievable work. We've been following. It's honestly amazing right now what people are putting out there and the creativity we're seeing. It's just, don't be scared. I think that's like the one thing I mean, Joan, let me know if I'm wrong, but I feel like everything you guys are doing, we're doing something we never thought we would ever do virtually. But it's a time you just sort of make do. And also as a way for you still to get your name out to places and for it to put a face to an institution.
Yeah, and I would say this has been an opportunity for us to really think critically about what facets of the stories that we tell at our site are particularly relevant in the moment.
I agree. I will say one other thing is if you're having guest speakers, which I know a lot of our adult programs are doing, do tests with them. Make sure their audio is working. Make sure they have an Ethernet cable, not wireless, because that can be a nightmare. So, any other questions?
When you are seeing, just another logistical question, kind of following up to what Trey said, when you have students sign in on their own, or I know that there might be some other like privacy issues with seeing students' first and last names. We did some work on data collection with the Smithsonian, and we weren't even allowed to ask a student's first name and their grade level on there because of privacy concerns on a survey. So I was just wondering if you ran into that also.
I haven't. Because I'm not recording the conversations. I think that's partly it. I haven't honestly done a lot of research into that. The only reason why I asked for the student's first and last name is only for the private school programs that we do, so that the teacher can let them in the room. If the teacher doesn't know their name, or look, right now kids have like different Zoom names. You know, I had one who had just like a smiley face and like hand, and the teacher knew who it was, so she let him in. I don't require them to have their first and last name. It's more for the teacher to let them in the room. I don't allow outsiders into those rooms, partly in case they have their names there. But I also, depending on the students, I ask them to change their name anyway to make it a code name. Like I'm codenamed Buttercup. So I always have Buttercup as my name. Wendy, you were Agent Darling, weren't you?
Yeah.
I think you're.
Sorry, I got booted for a second, but yes, Agent Darling as Wendy Darling from Peter Pan. That was my name. Yeah.
Probably not. I don't ask for emails. I don't ask for their names. It's just so they identify when they get into the room. If the teacher doesn't know them, they can kick them out. So I haven't really gone into the privacy part of it because it's never been an issue. I know that's not a great answer.
I do like the idea of the teacher controlling who comes into the room. That makes a lot of sense.
We are having a hard time right now. Our sales department, who deals with tour operators, is wanting to sell these programs for tour operators to sell to their school groups that aren't coming. That's been a source of contention because tour operators don't want to give out the teachers' names. I need that teacher information. I need to talk to the teacher right now. I need to make sure that they understand what a Zoom virtual program is, what our expectations are, what their expectations are. So I think that is key right now. If you're doing the individual classes, talk to the teacher. You need to talk to the teacher. So anyway, thank you guys. Sign up for Saturday.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to thank you, but
Wouldn't you say you have a family program on Saturday for it?
Friday night, and it's sold out. This one Fridays is sold out. But
Okay.
then we're doing it every Friday night, and so you can buy tickets for next Friday. I think it's on our website.
Okay.
May 8th will be the next one. No problem.
I'll grab some links for when we do the digest summary and put that in there.
But thank you guys. Stay safe. Feel free to email if you guys have any other questions.
Thank you, Lucy.
No problem. Thank you, Wendy.
Clap, clap, clap. Clap, clap, clap.
Hi, Ida.
Yay.
I can't wait to meet you in person. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.